Big Orange 2 is solving quadratics that are missing the linear term. We just did ones where we were missing the constant, and now we are doing ones that are missing the linear term. Obviously, we're not going to be missing the quadratic term, because that would put us back in Chapter 3, where we were graphing lines. The whole purpose of having a quadratic term is why we're in Chapter 5, so we're not going to be missing it. So these are ones where we're missing the linear term. I'm going to show you two ways to do them. One of the ways is kind of the way the book wants you to learn because we're factoring, but then I'll show you another way that you might like better. The way that the book wants you to learn, the factoring way, is to use the difference of two squares to factor. All the problems will probably be set up to be factored using the difference of two squares. So in that case, you would take your x squared minus 49, and you're going to break it up into two parts. You've had the difference of two squares before. X squared minus 49 gets broken up into two parts using the square root concept. And you just take the square root of everything in the problem. The square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 49 is 7. And you put a plus and a minus in the middle. Okay, that should be somewhat familiar to you. X squared minus 49 breaks down into x plus 7, x minus 7. That gives you your two parentheses that you then set equal to 0. X plus 7 equals 0. X minus 7 equals 0. Move the 7s to the other side via subtraction and then addition. And you have your two answers. Remember, we're finding solutions here. We're finding mystery numbers. So you can always plug them back in and check them. Same thing we've been doing all year is finding mystery numbers that work. Still doing the same thing. So you can always plug those back in at the end to the original problem and make sure that they work. Okay. So factoring using the difference of two squares, very easy concept once you get the gist. But I'm going to show you another way for those of you that are interested. You take the same problem, add the 49 to the other side, and then you can take the square root of both sides. But you have to be a little bit careful. Because whenever you take the square root of both sides of an equation, on the number side, you must put a positive and a negative. You can't just write 7 in this case. You have to say positive and negative 7. Reason being, if I tell you x squared is 9, what's x? Well, it could be 3 or it could be negative 3. You don't know. Because 3 squared is 9 and negative 3 squared is 9. So you have to account for both of those. Your square root button just gives you the principal square root. It just gives you the positive one. So you have to account for both of those by putting plus or minus. If you're going to screw that up and forget that, go with the difference of two squares. So you've got both of those, and I'll show you both methods on the next one to show you how it can be a little bit more complicated, and you can decide which one you like better. Okay, so let's do a second example here for difference of two squares. Four x squared minus 9. For difference of two squares to work, everything in the problem has to be a perfect square, and there must be a subtraction sign. If you don't have all that, it's not going to work. Okay? In this case, we have it because 4 is a perfect square, 9 is a perfect square, x squared is a perfect square, and you have a minus. How are you, Parker? Awesome. So 4x squared minus 9, factoring, becomes 2x plus 3 and 2x minus 3. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3 with a plus minus in the middle. Just like that. You can refoil that and check it, and it would go back into 4x squared minus 9, or redistribute it since I don't like the word FOIL. Now, you can set each one of those equal to 0. Big Orange 1 and Big Orange 2, you just break them, and Big Orange 3 when we get to it. Once you get those two parentheses, because it should be being set equal to 0, I don't have that written there. Let me add that real quick. Probably gets added later. So now we're going to, yep, there it is. Subtract 3 and divide by 2. Subtract 3, or add 3 and divide by 2. And you get your two answers, negative 3/2 and positive 3/2. Difference of two squares. When it's set up to do difference of two squares, every problem is pretty much the same. If you were going to do the other method for this one, you would add 9 and divide by 4 to get the x squared by itself. Then you would take the square root of both sides, which would involve taking the square root of 9 and the square root of 4, and adding a plus or minus. And those answers are the same. You could do the square root of 9/4 in your head. You just have to know that it's the square root of both numbers. And you have a choice there. You do not have to do both. You can pick which method you like best. Whichever one is going to give you more right answers is the one you should choose.